Welcome back, everybody. Monday morning edition of Hot Mic rolls on. Busy second hour. Jeff Kolpak will join us about a half hour. Chat, get ready for the Bison game tonight with Troy. The football news never stops. It was a busy one here over the last couple days for those that follow the FCS subdivision, with a couple of conferences coming out on what their plans on doing with the house settlement in terms of scholarship allotment. Also, the FCS may be adding a game. We'll get to that and everything with our guy Sam Herter, who joins us each and every Monday at 9:30 to chat what's going on in college football. I know we're 6 months out from a game, but that doesn't mean there's nothing happening, Sam. Give us the lowdown first. The SoCon and the Big Sky have come out on where they're standing on scholarship allotments in regards to the house settlement.
Yeah, so the SoCon came out with a kind of like a press release last week, just about what their intentions are and how they're going to handle the house settlements. And then I reached out to the Big Sky. And I don't think like the Big Sky has like publicly said what they're doing, but I kind of got like a statement from them on what their plan is. And it's basically for both is status quo. They're going to keep the scholarship allotments the same. Even for teams that do opt in. So football specifically, it'll still be 63 scholarship, cap for the SoCon and the Big Sky, which is what it is right now anyways. Now that differs from what the CAA is doing. The CAA did not set a cap. And so I know we've talked about this on your show before. Hypothetically, a CAA school could have 105 football scholarships, which gives them a massive advantage. But that's a lot of money, and money that these FCS schools just don't have. And I always use this example. The SEC is staying at 85 scholarships for the 2025 season. They could go up to 105, but they're staying at 85 just because of that increase in cost. So that tells you that Rhode Island isn't going to 85 scholarships and Monmouth isn't going to 100 scholarships. But it is interesting that the SoCon and the Big Sky decided to set a cap. I know the Missouri Valley Football Conference, they're not going to make a decision until after the house settlement is finalized, and so I'll still kind of wait and see with what the Valley is doing.
It's not surprising, Sam, just because, again, the cost of this. I mean, it's one thing, okay, we're going to opt in and we're going to have the press release come out that we're opting in, but the devil is in the details on this. How are you paying for it is the thing nobody's given me a straight answer on how you're going to get to 85 if you're trying to fund at 63. At an FCS level, no one's given me that answer yet.
Right. And like with NIL, I still think they're trying to figure out, or like revenue sharing, like how that works with Title IX. You have to, 50-50 revenue share. But like I think scholarships is still pretty cut and dry, where if an FCS school adds 22 football scholarships to get to 85, they have to add 22 scholarships on the women's side as well. And so that is just an increase in cost. And so, I think I was talking to some commissioners back in the football season, and I asked, like, wouldn't it make sense for a conference to set a cap just for, having that competitive equity where even if you have like one, like Montana State, like if they want to, like, could they hypothetically bump up to 80 scholarships? That gives them an advantage. And so I think that's why most conferences are going to decide to set a cap as like just in case sort of thing. But I've also heard, well, we might not set a cap just because we know, talking to all these ADs, that, hey, we don't have the money to add 5 football scholarships. And so, like, maybe we don't need to set a cap for our conference.
So on the flip side of that, the news that came out that St. Francis out of Pennsylvania, their men's basketball team, just won the NEC, made the NCAA tournament. With 2 days later announced they're dropping down from Division I to Division III. St. Francis came out here and played the Bison, I want to say about 15 years ago. This is I think we're going to have more of this. That we're going to have teams opting into the house settlement, frankly, on the FCS. Right? You don't want it, but I think this is probably more we're going to see than the other.
This is something that I think we've kind of been waiting for. Not St. Francis specifically, but just in general, teams dropping down just because ever since COVID, really, the cost to run an athletic department has just gone up and up and up, and the cost to be competitive continues to skyrocket just with NIL and cost of attendance and facilities, and now you kind of have the revenue sharing era as part of it is as well. And so I just think a lot of institutions are gonna maybe self-reflect a little bit and just ask, is this rat race of Division I college athletics, like, is it worth it for us? Like, what exactly is all the money we're putting into this? Are we getting any of it in
Right.
return? Like, how worth it is it? And especially for a school like St. Francis, where their enrollment is like 2, 3, 4,000, somewhere around there. But they've been like you mentioned, they were just in the NCAA tournament. Their football program has been decent out of the NEC. I think they made the playoffs in 2022. Last year they beat, who was it, Kent
They
State?
did. Yeah, they got an FBS win. That's
Yeah, then
correct. That's right.
St. Francis ends up finishing like 4-7, which makes you question how good the MAC is in Kent
Correct.
State, but that's a different conversation. So I don't know if it's going to be a long list of Division I schools dropping down to D2 or D3, but I do think maybe this kind of sets the first domino where there obviously are some political backlash to dropping down
Yep.
division. Even dropping from FBS to FCS came with um, some bad reactions from Idaho fans, and so I don't know if it's going to be a ton, but I think there could be a few more that decide to make this decision as
Well,
well.
I think it's going to be more just of, okay, are you in or out on Division One, and what Division One is going to look like? Because I think St. Francis and schools of the like had an idea. Well, we could survive in that Division One. The Division One of 2025 and beyond, there's only going to be a few that are going to be able to survive and thrive. Honestly, in the new look Division One.
Yeah, it's something where what exactly does Division I look like? Because
Right.
before, and even right now, like it's kind of like this big tents where you have schools with small resources like St. Francis all the way up to Texas and Ohio State. And what in a sense what kind of makes Division I cool is they're all under this one big tent, and then they all play in the same postseason tournaments: baseball, softball, and volleyball, and obviously the basketball tournaments as well. Football kind of does its own thing, and but now I mean, we how many Cinderella stories did we see in this year's NCAA tournament? Not
Zero.
not a whole lot. And so the just being competitive and trying to be in this whole umbrella big tent as one huge Division I, I just don't know how realistic that is anymore. And I mean, you could still operate as a mid-major and just say like, hey, we're just focused on winning our tournaments, and then if we go to our tournament, we'll go to the national tournament and take our shot there, and we're fine with that. We're not going to invest as much in facilities. Like, you can have that mindset as well, and that could work just to stay competitive in your conference. But still, just with all the resources and all the required resources as well, with you need to offer this many scholarships, you need to have this much support staff. Like the minimum to be Division I keeps
Right.
on going up, and I think it's more so maybe about what the minimum is now than like the maximum, which is making a lot of these smaller schools have those conversations of, is this worth it to be Division I?
So Tim Polisic was here about 10 days ago as we're getting ready for the start of spring football, and we were totally off the cuff, and this is how Polisic gets, mentions to me on air about that we're going to have to start preparing to be in camp even earlier. And he's mentioned a date like July 23rd for 2026, and I asked him, okay, are you preparing for another game? And I don't know if he was supposed to say it. He did, and then I look on the most recent meeting from the FCS Oversight Committee, and I'll read it out here on the air. The committee received an update. The committee discussed a concept that would permit 12 regular season contests each year and allow an FCS institution to conduct its first contest with outside competition beginning 2 Thursdays prior to Labor Day. The committee members agreed to solicit feedback from their conferences and other key FCS stakeholders, means TV. Then, during the April 14th video conference, the committee will discuss whether to recommend changes which would affect the 2026 season using the council's expedited legislative process. In other words, Sam, it looks like we're heading to a 12-game season starting next fall.
Yeah, it kind of seems we're heading that way. And last season and this season as well, it was a 12-game season. That's just how the calendar sets up, where there's an extra weekend before Thanksgiving. But more often than not, it's a 11-game season.
Correct.
And so it seems like, yeah, starting next year, just with all the approvals and stuff, they still have to go through. But it seems like they are trying to push this through, which is basically means, and we've talked about this too, is week 0
Yes.
pretty much becomes the new week 1. And so everything gets pushed back a little bit. It's starting earlier, which I think is interesting. And then maybe we'll have a new week 0. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll have to
don't
see.
go there, man. Don't get me
That's
started.
really, really early. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works for scheduling, because that probably means a fourth non-conference game.
Yep.
Does that mean more FBS opportunities? Does that mean better non-conference games, FCS versus FCS? Or, maybe it also means more non-D1 opponents as well, because sometimes it can be difficult to schedule non-conference games in the FCS. And, I saw someone mention, well, why don't they just start the season earlier, but still have 3 non-conference games, and then the week before the first round do conference championships and do things that way. But I don't think that is
No.
a part of the discussion of as far as pushing things back a little bit into the summer. So yeah, it seems like this is going to go through, which I think is pretty interesting.
So the season next year is slated to start September the 5th. This would mean week 1, whatever you want to call it, would be August 30th or 29th, which means, like Polisic said to me, July 23rd is when they're going to report. And there's only a certain amount of again, going back to it all goes back to money. The financial of this, though, Sam, is that means campus has got to open up, dining halls got to open up, all of that. Support staff's got to come back earlier. I don't know if everybody's going to be on board with doing it, but it's going to allow teams that want to play 12. North Dakota State's going to be one of them. I imagine all the heavyweights will want to play 12 are going to have to be back earlier, which is going to cost money to do that.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if there is pushback on this. I know the FCS Oversight Committee will, talk to the conferences and probably get some coach feedback as well. But the FCS Oversight Committee, there's representatives from each conference. And so if the Oversight Committee kind of drafted this proposal,
right,
that must mean there's more on board than pushing back.
Absolutely right.
On it. But yeah, I mean, that that makes for a long season. Whew. Even going back to when training camp starts, all the way to, if you're making a playoff run, all the way through through December. And you couple that with, if you do opt in, that means you're going to be making roster cuts, and so your practice squad gets a little smaller too. Now, for that, because I've seen some comments about, if you opt in, injuries are going to increase because you have less practice players and all of that. And I think it's kind of hit or miss. There was 3 SoCon teams last year that actually had less than 105 players on their roster. There's other ones that had 120. And so for some teams, their roster is going to look the same size-wise, even if they opt in or out. But I would be curious to hear some coach feedback of, even if it's one more game, it might not seem like a lot, but you also have to factor in all the extra weeks of practice going into it as well. So I'll be curious what the coach feedback is to it as well. And then plus the administrative side too, some admins might be saying, we got to schedule another non-conference.
We got to go find a game.
Enough to get 3.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
I don't know, but it sounds like there's momentum behind it. So it'll be interesting.
That's the thing now is, when this I think you're right. I think the tracks are down the road on this, that middle of next month, a couple weeks from now, ADs are going to start, okay, we got to go find another game. And that's the challenge for a lot of teams now, to go maybe. Again, for 2026, FBS teams pretty much have their schedule locked in, especially for that weekend. But the FCS has always said, why are we tied to the FBS? We have no reason to be. That's why I think they're going to go and do this, and we'll see. For those of us that love that level of football, it's, hey, another week of games. Just I'm not sure how you're going to go find them at this late date. I say that because it's not for this year. It's for 2026. Great stuff as always, bud. We'll do this again next week, okay?
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Sam Herder joins us each and every Monday, 9:30, to chat about what's going on around FCS football. We'll break. We come back. We'll wrap up our first hour. Jeff Kolpak waiting in the wings, talk some Bison football as spring ball is a week old, and NDSU women's basketball playing a biggie tonight in the WNIT. We roll on a sunny Monday. We're back after this.